Oh, yeah, feels good. Cash in those big long shot bets, baby. Plus 444 parlay. Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. I'm your host, as always, Clint McLean. And this week, the UFC heads to Tampa, Florida. We have got a sneaky good card. It's another one of those freebies that is just jacked with action, and I am super stoked for this card. Coming off of a good week, finally. But as always, we've got some lessons to learn. We've got some stuff to talk about. Let's dig right on into this thing because I've got a lot to say and I don't want this podcast to be 2 hours long. First things first, I want to ask everybody to take just a couple seconds out of your day. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, hit the little subscribe button so you always get notified when I get you the new episodes. If you are listening to this on a podcast platform, please subscribe to the podcast. Give me a 5-star rating if you're over on Apple Podcasts, anything along those lines that really helps out the show, helps get it out there so people can hear about the show, we can grow this thing, and we still got to get those subscribers up higher. I am loving the direction that we're trending, but we need more. I would love to go into 2020 with 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. That is a lofty, lofty goal. We're sitting at 305 right now, so we've got a lot of work to do. I know we can get there. Let's freaking try it. Speaking of which, I have got some shout outs. Welcome to new subscribers. We've got Jan Van Den Boss. We have Jason Swanee. We have Nick Zadek. And you know what? You're not a new subscriber, but I got to give a shout out to my man Boogs. He comments every single episode. He either leaves me a thumbs up or he just says thank you. And Boogs, I got to tell you, I appreciate you. You've been here since the beginning, and I love that comment. It's one of those positive things. I get it every single week, and it just makes me smile. So thank you, Boogs. The other thing I want to mention is, as always, your tips and your donations for the show keep my world turning. They are never expected, but they're always appreciated. I am not a tout. I don't sell picks. I never try to sell you guys anything, and I give all my information out for free. I work my ass off for this podcast, so any tips and donations that you would give that help out the show and keep me running, I would really appreciate it, especially when we come off of a big week, cashing a giant 3-teamer parlay the way that we did. I know I made you all some money. So if you want to do that, my information is down in the description of the podcast, at Die Hard MMA, I believe, on Venmo, and then at Maximus in 3D on PayPal. So thank you all once again for all of that. I appreciate the love and the support. Why don't we take a look at the recap of last week's UFC 243? We did a lot, but there's still always spots where we can learn and improve. Since I mentioned that parlay, the first thing I've got to start with is you got to follow me on Twitter. Hop over at Die Hard MMA Pod on Twitter. If I give a play out that I'm talking about cashing and you're like, Clint, what is that? I didn't hear about that on the podcast. It's because I tweeted it. I tweet out early lines when I like picks and I like spots and I think the lines are going to move against us. I tweet them out early. Same thing goes later on. After I see the weigh-ins, after the money comes in and the lines move and they drop, I will tweet those picks out and I'll make them official at a certain point too. So you got to be following me over on Twitter to get all that info. The folks who followed me on Twitter cashed a 3-leg parlay for plus 444. I will shut up about that now, but I'm super excited because it's been a while since we've hit one of those. Let's rewalk through that evening, shall we? We got the night started off with a loser, Bruno Silva. You know what? I felt like I made a solid bet here, and given that a lot of sports betting, especially MMA sports betting, is kind of like pre-flop poker. You got a good hand, you got a good spot, you think you like your bet, you put your money in the center, and then you just have to wait and see what happens. Given everything we knew, I really loved my plus 200 spot here on Bruno Silva. They were 1-1 going into the third, and I thought that Khalid Taha was going to be the one who gassed out, and I thought Bruno Silva was going to be the one to crank it up. And you know what? If he got one final takedown in round 3, if he could have got it to the mat, it was so clear and obvious that he was miles ahead of Khalid Taha. Taha wasn't getting back up. If Bruno could have gotten that takedown at the beginning of round 3, he wins that fight. Period. End of story. So I really like the value that we had on Bruno Silva at plus 200. He had a shot, but you know what? Taha is a monster. Taha is a beast. That's one of those ones where I can say ifs, ands, or buts, whatever. It didn't happen, right? So I like the shot. I'm okay with the shot. I felt like there was value at 200. Taha, I underestimated. So yeah, that one didn't pan out. Our next pick, though, was Ji-Yoon Kim, and let me tell you, baby, did she come through hard. I told you all that Nadia Kassim is so green. I told you that she may not be UFC caliber, and I also told you that Ji-Yoon Kim might get this thing done by knockout. Nadia Kassim just doesn't like getting hit. Ji-Yoon Kim throws heavies. And by the way, when that fight started, the whole fake the high five to get the kick in by Kassim, that's some dirty chicken shit. I hate that. So I'm happy to see that she got handled the way that she's supposed to after pulling something like that. I severely, sincerely hope that some of you listened to me and got on that inside the distance sprinkle because I did, and that was fun. Now, Jake Matthews was our next pick of the evening. No, I'm sorry. Going in order, Matt Riddle gets it done by 3-round decision versus Jamie Malarkey. That was a hell of a back and forth. That was a great fight. Really, really awesome fight. Cashed the first leg of the parlay there. He was definitely the better stand-up striker, and that's really what we expected. I didn't think that Malarkey would be able to keep him on the mat enough to make his grappling advantage worthwhile, and that's kind of exactly what happened. I feel pretty good about that one, but it was a hell of a war. And for only the third fight in on the card, that was freaking fantastic. This card, as far as action goes, was awesome. Not to mention the upsets. I mean, the next card, Callan Potter came out here and handled Maki Pitolo over 3 rounds. That was nuts. I am so happy we didn't try to do like big favorite parlays or anything like that on this card because so many of the big favorites shit the bed. And I'm kind of sad I didn't take the stab on Potter with Maki Pitolo being what he was coming off of Dana White's Contender Series, riding so high. I saw in the stuff that he had kind of a grappling deficiency and he just wanted to be a brawler. I thought that Potter was going to look old and slow. I didn't think the late move up in a weight class was going to benefit him, but holy crap, was I wrong. He got a massive benefit moving up in weight. He was the bigger man out there in the octagon, and I honestly thought that I thought he was going to look tall and skinny, kind of strung out like he belonged at the weight class below, but he looked filled out, man. He might do something at welterweight after moving up. He looks like he belongs there. So Jake Matthews, he absolutely handled Rostam Akman, and it was upsetting to me because I thought he was going to show up and show out for his hometown crowd. He really had a very measured approach to this fight. He was a warranted minus 300 favorite in this spot, but I thought he was going to go for the finish. I thought he was going to try and get it done in front of his hometown crowd, send a message. He went the other way with it, which is dominance just in a completely different form. You know what I mean? He completely shut down Akman, did whatever he wanted to do. He knew he wasn't in any danger, and he just pieced him up for 15 minutes. Sucks for our bet, but if you parlay Jake Matthews or something like that, congratulations, because he definitely deserved to be that big of a favorite. As far as the picks go, though, I was not happy at this point because we were kind of moving in the wrong direction here. And then fucking Jorgen De Castro comes out and walk-off KOs Justin Tafa after I talked about Tafa having death touch. Made me look stupid. Holy crap. Now, that's one, I don't feel too bad about this because I have a blind bet. When I see an underdog I like at heavyweight and it's middle to low tier heavyweights, and I see a guy who, in this case, I thought had the power advantage, which apparently I underestimated the power that Castro comes with, I take that. I take that spot every day. I like the dog money. And that's kind of, what I told everybody. When the line flipped, it's like, okay, if you want to take Castro at this point, go for it. You're getting the dog money. Wow, Castro lit him up. Tafa looked like he didn't belong. That was crazy. So it sucked to lose a unit on that one as well, but that's kind of that coin flippy strategy in that spot that I'll take the stab at the short line basically every single time. It's worked out more than it hasn't, so don't worry. I'm going to keep doing that one. Then we have another Twitter play. Diego Lima got down to where I wanted him to be. We got minus 135 on Diego Lima. The landslide of Luke Jumo money. I have no problem standing on top of the mountain alone and beating my chest and unzipping my pants and pulling my giant balls out and making a play that nobody agrees with. I have no problem doing that when it comes to MMA. Diego Lima was the better man. Diego Lima was the bigger man, the longer man, the more technical striker. He had every advantage in that fight, and he was masterful the way he pieced up Luke Jumo. That was an amazing, incredible performance by Diego Lima, and it was really fun to watch, especially after knowing that all that money came in on Jumo. That was a big, fun win for me. But again, I set my mind. I wanted a line. I wanted a specific line or under where he was going to be, and I didn't pull the trigger until we got it. So I feel like I showed some good, solid discipline there, and I hope some of y'all tailed me on that. When he got down to that minus 140, minus 135 range, that was perfect. Great value on Diego Lima there, and he got it done, which is even better. So Tai Tuivasa, just like Pitolo, man, I really thought that the UFC was setting him up here with a winnable fight. But this is where you cannot, I say it every time, you cannot discount the human element of mixed martial arts. Sergey Spivak is a can brought in to get knocked out by Tai Tuivasa, and he said, no, screw you, I'm going to win this thing. And that he did. Holy shit. So I tweeted this out, and it bears repeating here on the podcast. You know how I said that we've got that trash can that we take, low IQ fighters, and we just crumple them up and we toss them in the trash bin and don't ever bet on them? Tai Tuivasa is so bad, his fight IQ is so low that I had to get a new trash can. I tossed him in the trash can and he infected it. I need a new trash bin for people who have bad fight IQ. That was a terrible performance, and he obviously hasn't worked on his takedown defense game whatsoever. He just steps in there and goes, I'm going to hit you in the face really hard and you're not going to be able to take me down. We're sorry, bucko. That doesn't work at this level. And apparently it doesn't even work at the regional level where Sergey Spivak came from. Now we got to the fun part. Our boy Dan Hooker, Al Iaquinta in the co-main event. This is where I goofed, okay? The next two fights in a row, I goofed. So luckily, we had Dan Hooker and Israel Adesanya tied in that city kickboxing parlay with Riddle. But if we hadn't done that, this would have been a very depressing night, because I took Dan Hooker inside the distance at plus 260, and there was massive, massive value on that. He had Al Iaquinta all kinds of hurt in every single round, and especially in round one, knocked him down, got on top of him at the end of it, and if he just had, I think, 30 more seconds, he would have pounded him out. But it became clear that Hooker also had kind of turned a page in his career. He wasn't wildly going for the finish. I kind of expected that he would continue his normal hunting for the finish ways, especially the way he was talking pre-fight and stuff like that. I really thought he was going to keep doing that. But it was obvious that he wanted to kind of send a message, and he wanted to be the guy that could win picking his opponent apart and stuff like that. He didn't really step on the gas at the end of the fight the way I thought that he would. And that really sucks for us. Having the inside the distance bet rather than a straight bet, that really sucks for us. And in hindsight, this is something that in poker, they call it fancy play syndrome. That's where you're really feeling yourself, you got a good read, you're doing good, but you push it just a little bit too far. You're trying to squeeze every little bit of value that you can out of a hand, and you take it just one little push too far, and you end up getting caught. You get snapped off by somebody. And that's kind of what happened here. Dan Hooker was absolutely playable. He was, minus 160? We could have and should have laid minus 160 to win a unit straight. And I got blinded by the plus 260 because I was sure he was going to be able to get it done. And here's the thing. He was able to get it done. He just didn't. So we could have been sitting on a whole nother unit of profit there. And I kind of messed that one up. And the thing that sucks is the main event was the same thing in an even worse scenario. So we were getting plus 325 on Izzy by decision. And first and foremost, let me say, I loved that bet. I absolutely loved that bet. Crazy value on that bet for the way that Israel Adesanya fights. But it became clear to me in about 30 seconds that this fight wasn't going the distance. And this is, again, kind of that pre-flop poker analogy that I was using before. I didn't think Rob Whittaker was going to come out with a blitz-heavy attack and never get off of it. I mean, it brings to mind Henry Cejudo versus Marlon Moraes. When his strategy wasn't working for the first 2-3 minutes or so, he stopped. He went back to his corner in between rounds, and they figured something else out because the strategy wasn't working. Rob Whittaker came out and he blitzed over and over and over and over, and Izzy just kept on blasting him. I mean, to the point that he got dropped right at the end of the first round. He literally got saved by the bell in the first round. He goes back to his corner, he sits down, and they don't go, hey, dude, try something else. He just sticks to the game plan. Make it work. And I think that was a huge mistake on his part and his corner's part. I'm not sure whose call it was to not change the game plan, but whoever it was made a massive mistake and let him just walk into a knockout loss. Now, obviously, Israel Adesanya is such a special fighter and such an amazing fighter. Maybe he gets the knockout in round 3 or round 4 anyway. But our bet had absolutely no chance whatsoever when Rob Whittaker decided to go out on his shield if his plan didn't work. So that one sucked, and it sucked worse because Izzy was it was a pick'em. You know, you could have got him at dog money basically the entire week or months leading up to this fight, and then he was a pick'em at fight time. There was value on any and all of that, and we should have pocketed another unit there. So it sucks to be looking at this because I was sitting here thinking, you know what, we got to cash plus 1.39 units. That feels good, and if either one of those props had come through for us, it would have been a massive night, huge night. But you know what? If I had just played those fights straight, like I should have in this particular case, if I had stayed away from the fancy play syndrome, it would have felt a whole lot better because we would have had a 3.39 units night instead. So, lessons learned, one of those things. Luckily, we pulled off the winning night either way, and we hit that nice big fat parlay, which always feels good. But you know what? These are those types of things that when the lines are close like that, we don't necessarily need to take the props unless we can massively justify the situation. So looking at it, backtracking it, I liked the inside the distance play on Dan Hooker, but honestly, we could have done 1-1. We could have laid the 1-6 to win one and then also sprinkled the inside the distance or even done 2 units on that one because I did think he was going to finish Al. And then the Izzy by decision, I should have just played him straight. You know, bottom line, should have just played Izzy straight. So anyway, that gets us done with the recap. That was a phenomenal night of fights. And usually when you've got a great night of fights like that, the next fight kind of lets up. They stack a card and then it's like, oh, well, here's all the crumbs that are left over. We have got an absolutely phenomenal fight here at UFC Tampa. The entire card is just action, action, action fighters. This is going to be fun. Let's get into it. Oh, one thing I almost forgot actually, right before we get into this thing. So I do articles and I make live appearances on SBR Picks. I go on their YouTube channel. I break these fights down once a week and stuff like that, and I do writing for them. And they actually have a contest running that is hosted by yours truly. Head on over to sbrpicks.com. I will put a link down in the description below. They are hosting a free UFC Picks contest. Every single week, if you can beat me and everybody else in the contest, obviously, giving straight picks on the fights in the forums, you can win up to $50. At the end of a 4-week stretch, last week was the first event, and they announced it after I did the podcast, so I couldn't put it out on the podcast last week. This is week number 2. All you've got to do is sign up on the forums, and all you do is reply to the thread. They will post the fights that you can pick from to give your picks on, and whoever picks the most accurately wins that week. It's a $50 weekly prize for the winner, and then if you beat me over the course of those 4 weeks, you can get 100 bet points on their site, and then I think there's a $100 prize at the very end of it. So they're giving away a total of $300 that you guys can win a share of, and it's absolutely free. Once again, I will put the description in the link below. Click it, check it out, come compete with me, and let's have some fun making picks and winning free money. All right, so UFC Tampa, we kick our night off in the women's flyweight division with JJ Aldrich, 7-3-0, taking on Lauren Mueller, who is 5-2-0. And you all know I love me some JJ. JJ is my girl, and we have bet on her in the past. She has crisp hands, and she's a good, solid pressure fighter. She's got solid takedown defense. She's good in the clinch. She's got really good balance, and that helps her stay up even when her opponents are bigger and stronger than her. She tends to walk her opponents down, and she's got good, crisp shots on her punches, but she doesn't have a whole lot of power. Now, she is kind of small for the division. She can get physically outmuscled and overpowered by her opponents, but she really paces herself well. She keeps kind of the same pace in the first round as she does in the third round. No cardio issues, manages her gas tank. She manages range very, very well, in my opinion, and she's got good, solid head movement, so she's able to dip, dodge, duck, and dive out of the way of her opponent's shots. Dodgeball reference there for you. On the flip side of this thing, Lauren Mueller, she's also a pressure fighter, and she actually uses her elbows really, really well, especially coming in and out of clinches, things like that, and she is really, really good at sensing a finish. If she feels like she's got her opponent hurt, or if she feels like she's down on the scorecards in the third round, something like that, she comes out hard. She comes out looking for the finish, and that's something that I think works well for her. Now, in the UFC, Lauren Mueller is 1-2, so her two losses have been her back-to-back last two fights against Yonan Wu and Poliana Botelho. Wu, obviously, we're a fan of. Poliana Botelho, in the middle of the road on. JJ Aldrich is also coming off of a loss. She got TKO'd by Maycee Barber. Now, that's one where the athleticism was just too much to bridge. She could not get there with Maycee Barber, and she got handled. Now, before that, she was on a nice little 3-fight win streak against, I'm not going to try and say that, Danielle Taylor and then Poliana Viana. She has been, rather up and down. She's 2-3 in her UFC career, and the problem for me with this fight is I absolutely favor my girl JJ Aldrich here, but this isn't the kind of spot that you want her to be at. She opened up as a -165 favorite, and now she's sitting around -170, -185. 58% of the money has come in on Lauren. We've got a reverse line movement spot where the 42% on JJ has pushed her to be a larger favorite, and I completely agree with that. I think JJ Aldrich is going to do what she does, and she's going to march down Lauren for a win. The problem, like I said, is this line. You don't get value on a girl like JJ when she's a massive favorite. I'm not going to lay the chalk on her. You get her at even money, maybe as a slight favorite, or especially when she's a +150, +160 underdog. Those are the spots where JJ Aldrich looks good, shows up, shocks everybody, looks phenomenal for being this unassuming looking woman, and I love it. But this isn't it. Unfortunately, we're going to have to pass here. The pick is JJ Aldrich. I think she picks Lauren Mueller apart and walks her down, makes Lauren back up, and then just kind of points her way to a decision win. But I'm not going to lay that kind of wood on her in this case. In just the second fight of the night, we've already got a good one. We're at the men's middleweight division where Marvin Vettori takes on Andrew Sanchez, and it is about time. This is the third time that this fight has been scheduled. It's been canceled twice because of Andrew Sanchez pulling out. And Marvin Vettori has wasted no words at all in letting us know what he thinks here. He thinks that Sanchez is ducking him because he doesn't like the matchup. And I got to tell you, that makes a whole lot of sense. I can't say that he's wrong here. Now, obviously, I don't want to doubt the heart of a fighter like Andrew Sanchez, but there's something to be said for bad matchups and making sure you don't run into them at the wrong time. And I think this is a bad matchup, and Andrew Sanchez, I think, may have been trying to get out of it. I kind of think that. So Marvin Vettori, first and foremost, 13-4-1. He's only 26 years old. Really young, hungry prospect. He's had a bit of a rough road in the UFC, but he's shown some really, really bright spots. I think he's got a future in the UFC. Andrew Sanchez, on the flip side of this thing, is 31 years old, so he's He's in his prime. He's kind of tapering off to the end of his prime here, and he has gone 2-4 in the UFC. In his last 4, he's 2-2. He got KO'd back-to-back against Anthony Smith, Lionheart, who's since moved up to 205, and Ryan James. In 2018 and 2019, he has 2 decision wins, one that really hurt me against Marc-Andre Barriault. That one really pissed me off. We were on Barriault on that one. You all know the story if you listen to the podcast. So, I don't like Sanchez. I do not like Andrew Sanchez as a fighter. So he has moved out to TriStar Gym, and he's shown some improvements since then. He showed a slightly improved gas tank. He's shown some improved fight IQ, but he hasn't really changed a whole lot as a fighter. He looks for the takedown. That's basically it. He's a pressure fighter. He wants to back you up. He wants to put you against the fence and then use the takedowns to get you on the mat. Now, before he got into the UFC, he was KOing people left and right. As soon as he got to the UFC, he can only manage decision wins, or he's the one that gets KO'd, and I honestly think he's a little bit chinny. Especially when he gets to the 3rd round, he gasses out and he gasses hard, and that's when people can catch him. Both of his knockout losses came in round 3. Marvin Vettori is young and rising. I mean, he stepped into the UFC in his 2nd fight. He got Antonio Carlos Jr. They threw this kid to the wolves right away. Since then, he's got a couple wins under his belt. He beat Vitor Miranda, and then he went to a draw with Armari Akhmedov, and he lost a close, competitive split decision to Israel Adesanya back in 2018. Every time we talk about Marvin Vettori, I bring that up because talk about career trajectories. Israel just took the belt, and 1 year ago, this kid was fighting super close with that guy. So, again, I think that speaks volumes to his potential. He fights up to the level of his competition when he's got a tall test in front of him. Now, his biggest asset, he really showed off in his last win against Cesar Ferreira. He is a strong defensive wrestler. He's got an excellent gas tank, and he right now is training with Kelvin Gastelum, Bilal Muhammad, and Kamaru Usman. He is training with the 170-pound champion Kamaru Usman, who's one of the best wrestlers in the game. He's going to be ready for anything and everything that Andrew Sanchez throws at him. I think he is a very justifiable -300 favorite. And if you follow me on Twitter, you know I've already picked this kid, and I've got him in a parlay. So let's put a little pin in that. The other thing that I want to touch base on over here is even though we've got him in the parlay, you may want to check out the props on this kid. I'm probably going to sprinkle a little bit on Vettori inside the distance. You can get him at +210 right now, and I especially am going to be sprinkling Marvin Vettori in round 3 when that comes out a little closer to fight time because, like I said, Sanchez gasses out. He's got some chin issues. Marvin Vettori doesn't have those gas tank issues and hits like a truck. So in the 3rd round when Sanchez slows down, I think Vettori's got a shot at finishing him. Now, I'm not going to make that official pick. I'm not going to make that a full unit play either because I think he's better off in the parlay. Whether he wins this thing inside the distance or by decision, we just want to be on him in one way, shape, or form, I believe. And I learned my lesson from last week. He goes to decision a lot when he wins, so I'm not making the inside the distance play a full unit play and then just leaving it at that. He can win this thing inside the distance. I think there's value on inside the distance. We're going to parlay him. We are moving down to welterweight for this one, 170 pounds, where Miguel Baeza takes on Hector Aldana. Now, Miguel Baeza is 6-0. He's coming to us off of the Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series with a decision win over Victor Reina. Hector Aldana is El Charro, who is 4-2, coming off back-to-back losses in the UFC. One by KO, one by decision to Leonardo Staropoli. Now, Baeza is on the short list of my new favorite nicknames in the UFC. He is Carmel Thunder. He is 6-0. He is 7-0 as a pro. And what you may not know is he's actually 6-0 as an amateur as well. So combined record, the dude is 13-0. He looks like he's new and he's fresh coming in here, but he's no joke. He's been putting in some work. He's got good, crisp boxing. He's got a really, really long reach, and he's got knockout power in both of his hands. He's got good, solid grappling, and he's training with Niko Price, who fights later on this card. That's a positive. I always love it. You guys know, hence the City Kickboxing parlay last week. I love it when teammates are fighting on the same card. They're peaking at the same time. They're pushing each other for the same thing. It's a good recipe for success, in my opinion. Hector Aldana is actually coming off of 3 losses in a row because he was on the Ultimate Fighter and actually lost one of those as well. And the biggest thing that stands out to me about Hector Aldana is he looks like Bigfoot Silva's lost son. The dude's got a chin on him. Dear God, the thing is like a foot wide. I'm shocked anyone was able to knock him out with that thing because holy damn. So he's got a really stiff jab. He feints level changes really well, and he steps in. He throws heavies, man. He's got a blitzing forward attack, and his jab is one of my favorite things about his game. It's really, really crisp. He steps in on it. He sits on it. It's a hard, solid jab, and it's a good thing. It's one of the things I find underrated with fighters, when you see a little thing like that you're like, geez, if you just do that all the time, that'd be pretty fantastic. The only problem is here in this fight against Miguel is I think Miguel is going to be able to piece him apart with that. I think Miguel is going to be the longer and faster fighter. I think he hits harder. I think Hector, honestly, is just too basic. And I also think this is a spot where the UFC is going, oh, we've still got this kid on contract. Well, we've got this 6-0 kid who's flashy, who knocks people out, who's going to be fun and entertaining. Well, let's throw the kid coming off of 2 losses against him and give him kind of a layup for his first fight in the UFC. Now, we don't have a fantastic record with kids coming off of I call them kids. Geez, why do I keep doing that? Fighters. We don't have a huge track record of good fighters coming off of Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. It's kind of a mixed bag. You never know what you're gonna get. Some of them look like ballers on the Contender Series because they got a bad opponent and then they step into the UFC and they shit the bed, just like Coconut Bombs did last week. Then you've got other guys who actually have like a real stiff test in the Contender Series, and they come to the UFC and you think, yeah, maybe they're not that great because they didn't ball out when they were on the Contender Series, but they're phenomenal when they get into the UFC against the lower end of the competition because there's not as much hype on them. You know what I mean? If you come in hyped in, you're jumping into the middle or the deep end of the division already. If you come in off of, a squeaky decision win, you might get some low-end tier competition, and then you're going to look good because you'll be able to wreck them. So I do think that Miguel Baeza is probably going to win this fight, but there's no way in hell I'm betting him. He's sitting at around minus 200 right now, minus 210. I mean, even though he's got losses, Hector Aldana is a UFC vet. He's going to have the upper tier experience edge, in my opinion, at this point, just based off fighting Keenan Song and Leonardo Strapoli. Those are, recognizable top tier names over, we don't have any idea who the goofballs that Miguel Baeza has fought. So as much as I do think Miguel Baeza is going to win, I'm not touching him at minus 200. So Miguel Baeza is the pick, but I don't lay that kind of wood. And even at taking something like the Miguel Baeza inside the distance prop, I mean, it's only plus 130. So you can lay 200 to win him, or you can get plus 130 inside the distance. But honestly, I'm not sure he gets the finish. I think he gets the finish. I do believe he gets the finish. But plus 130 on a guy that's still relatively unknown just isn't enough juice for me to take that stab on it. Unfortunately, we got to take a pass here. So it's kind of funny for this week. It's kind of the exact opposite of last week. Last week, I was locking and loading my Terminator minigun full of money where I just wanted to rapid fire bets all over the entire card. I had spots I liked left and right. The lines are a little wide on this kind of a fight card. It's like the favorites are inflated favorites because everyone knows they're favorites, so the money is pouring in. So I'm trying to pinpoint a couple of underdogs that I like to take shots on, and it's a really difficult card to bet and find value on, and I don't want to come off of a short winning week that could have been a big winning week and then give away units. We only made 1.39 units for the podcast record last week, and I would hate to step in here and drop like 4 units or something on this crap card when we've got phenomenal cards coming up the next couple weeks and spots that I'm going to like much, much better. So I might pass a lot this week, and I also am going to be looking for totals and stuff like that to play when they come out a little later on. So just one more time, give me a follow over at Die Hard MMA Pod because we might be padding that pick selection later on in the week. The next fight that we've got is one that I am excited about, though. In the men's bantamweight division, we've got Marlon Chito Vera, 14-5-1, taking on Andre Ewell, who is 15-5. Now, Andre Ewell, who is Mr. Highlight, has maybe the worst UFC name that you could have asked for. He doesn't do much highlighting, especially in the UFC since he's gotten here. He has gone 1-2. He got a split decision win over Renan Barão. He got subbed out by Nathaniel Wood, and then he did get a nice decision win over Anderson Dos Santos, which he did show some improvements. I mean, he was subbing and knocking everybody out on the regional scene before that, so maybe that's where the name came from, but yeah, I just don't think it fits him. And then my boy, Marlon Chito Vera. He is a bet-on fighter for me. I love this guy. He's a finisher. He's got an 86% finish rate, which is just phenomenal. 8 out of those 14 wins are submissions. He actually, going on his Instagram page, he did some BJJ work with BJ Penn, which I know BJ Penn's all over the news for getting in a brawl and, all the shit that he's doing outside the cage right now that isn't good, but he's a sick Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist. I mean, they called him the prodigy for a reason, so I don't want Marlon Vera hanging out with him too much, but if you're learning from a guy like that, that's still a good thing. That is still a good thing to go and learn from that caliber of a fighter. He's also been working his wrestling with Alpha Male. He was out there doing some training with TJ Dillashaw, which I think speaks volumes. That's going to be a real important point in this fight. He's got a 3.15 significant strikes per minute rate, and then he actually absorbs 3.83. So he does tend to get outstruck by his opponents, but he's faced a lot of decent to solid level caliber opponents. He's been in the UFC for a really long time at this point. Now, Andre Ewell, the newcomer at this point, he's actually the older, even though he's the new guy in the UFC. Jeez, I'm stumbling over this. He's the new guy in the UFC. He's the older man in general. He's 31 years old versus Marlon Vera's 26. He's long and he's rangy, and he actually knows how to use that range. He does fight really long at the end of his jab very, very well. He has good in and out movement, and as much as I was down on him in his first 2 fights, looking at his non-UFC competition, I was not a fan of Andre Ewell. He's shown improvement in his last fight. He seems to kind of be putting it together and trending in the right direction. He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage here, and he does have very, very fast hands, and he is an excellent counter striker. But again, I don't think that his knockout power has transitioned well to the UFC. I don't know if he's going to be able to knock a guy like Marlon Vera out, who has never been knocked out. So I think he's going to do well in the striking department, but I don't know if he's going to be able to put a guy down like Vera, who just doesn't lose that way. I mean, he lost to Douglas Silva de Andrade and John Lineker most recently in the UFC. That was in 2017 and 2018, but he's broke off a 4-fight win streak since then. And you all know I love Marlon Chito Vera. Given the fact that he has been working his ground game with guys like BJ Penn and TJ Dillashaw, to me, that outlines his game plan for this fight absolutely perfectly. He doesn't want to stand with Andre Ewell. Andre Ewell actually has a problem with the takedowns. He gives them up. I mean, for lack of a better way to put it, 3 of his 5 losses have come by submission. So once he's on the ground, he is definitely out of his comfort zone. And we all know that that is Marlon Chito Vera's world. I think Marlon Vera is going to strike with him only as long as he needs to. And as soon as possible, he gets this thing to the mat. And once it's on the mat, I think that Vera's got a huge edge. I mean, we saw that in his fight with Nolan Hernandez on that short notice replacement fight back in July. He kind of was having a hard time getting started on the feet. He was having a rough start getting it going. And then in round 2, he went, okay, screw this. I'm going to just put it on the mat. And as soon as he did, he got the back, got the hooks in, got the rear naked choke, and called it a day. Now, Marlon Vera is currently sitting around minus 170. Some money has come in on Andre Ewell. He opened up a little bit higher than that. Ewell's sitting around plus 150, plus 140, something like that. And this is a spot where I'm very, very confident in the fact that I think Marlon Vera wins this thing by submission. So I'm going to go ahead and put 1 unit on that prop. Marlon Vera inside the distance at plus 125. we're going to turn this minus 170 favorite into a plus 125 dog. We know he's got the power to get this thing done by knockout, especially if he pins him on the ground, does some ground and pound, or if he gets his back. We know Andre Ewell is susceptible to chokes and that kind of thing. Vera doesn't tend to do well with decisions either. He hasn't won a UFC decision since 2016. The 2 decisions that he went to were those 2 losses that I mentioned earlier. Based on that and the fact that he's got an 86% finish rate, I mean, dude's a finisher. His strength is Andre Ewell's weakness. If this thing goes to the cards, I think that Andre Ewell is going to have a much, much more live chance of actually coming away with the victory. So instead of laying that kind of chalk, we're just going to risk the 1 unit to take Marlon Vera inside the distance and get it done before that final bell. Our next fight is at flyweight, where Deiveson Figueiredo, 16-1-0, takes on Tim Elliott, who is 15-8. And this is a very, very strange and interesting matchup, in my opinion. So Deiveson Figueiredo is that little monster that we know down at 125. He's 16-1 with 8 knockouts, a 50% knockout rate, and he messed us up when we took Alexander Pantoja back in July. This dude is something else. I mean, he's huge for the weight class. He's just physically strong. He's got heavy hands. He's got really good footwork. He moves in and out well, and he does a good job of walking his opponents into big shots. He's a very intelligent, technical striker. He throws massive flying knees. He uses hooks. He makes space when he's on the mat so he can get back up. He's got an improved takedown defense and an improved get-up game. We saw that in his last fight. So the secret to beating him was the takedown. He got taken down a lot early in his UFC career, and then Rousseau Formiga was actually the one able to grind that win out over him, and you can see that he put in the work to try to patch that hole a little bit when he fought Alexander Pantoja. I thought Pantoja would be able to follow that same game plan, and he could not. He wasn't able to keep Figueiredo on the mat. Every time he got him down, Figueiredo got right back up. He's only 31 years old, so he is in his prime at this point, and he's taking on Tim Elliott, who is 32 and has alternated wins and losses ever since 2016 when he won the Ultimate Fighter and he got his shot at Demetrius Johnson. Now, first and foremost, let me say I'm not a fan of Tim Elliott because way back when he got that shot off the Ultimate Fighter and fought Demetrius Johnson, he screwed me. That was the Tough 24 finale, the one I was at in Vegas for my birthday. Had a big fat bet on DJ inside the distance. And Demetrius had this guy in submission attempts 2 to 3 times a round. Man, it was a 25-minute round fight, and DJ tried to choke him out every which way. And Tim Elliott basically took home the "you tried" ribbon just staying alive in that fight. He was never trying to win it. He knew he was going to get his ass beat in that fight, and he just wanted to not get finished. And about the 3rd round in, I was like, motherfucker, this guy is not going to get choked out, is he? He just worked sub-defense. That's all he did. He scrambled. He gave up the takedowns. He tried to keep safe in the transitions, tried to stay safe off of his back, and just did everything he could to make sure that DJ couldn't submit him. And it was the most frustrating fight in the world for me to watch because it was 25 minutes long of me holding my breath for 2 or 3 minutes, thinking that I was going to cash my bet, and then in the end, not cashing the bet. I was so pissed off. So he comes back. He wins a decision over Luis Smolka, which we all know that the scrambling, grappling game is Luis Smolka's game. So Elliott's very, very good at that as well. When you put both those 2 guys in there, it's going to be a ground game. It's going to be a scramble fest, and Elliott got it done. He takes on Ben Wynn and actually gets subbed out in 15 seconds, and that was in June of 2017, which was incredibly surprising in my opinion. It almost seemed like something was wrong with Tim Elliott for that one. I would need to kind of go back in time and see what happened there because my brain is telling me that he wasn't himself that night. At any rate, December 2017, he took on Mark De La Rosa and then subbed him out, which we kind of know the flaws with Mark De La Rosa at this point. But once again, if you want to take a look back at this thing, it's all ground game. He has only fought ground dominant fighters, and he's really fought other scrambly type of fighters. The UFC has given him really favorable matchmaking in my opinion. Now he's fighting Deiveson Figueiredo, who's arguably the guy to get the next shot at the title at 125. 16-1, riding a massive win streak outside of that one blip to Rousseau Formiga. I mean, this is this is almost throwing him to the wolves, especially when you think he tore his ACL in 2018. He's been out for a year and a half because he tore his ACL and has been in recovery ever since then. He's got really wild and awkward striking. It's really hard to get the timing down on this guy, and he uses that to get in, close the distance, and get his takedowns. He averages 4.26 takedowns over 15 minutes. So he takes his opponents down a lot. But what that means to me too is that he scrambles looking for a submission and he can't keep them there. With a guy like Deiveson Figueiredo, if you can't hold him down, he's going to get back up and he's going to start beating on you. So I don't know that Tim Elliott will be able to repeatedly take down Figueiredo and then keep him down there long enough to do anything with it. Deiveson Figueiredo's takedown defense and his IQ in that area has been improving recently, and Tim Elliott is coming back after a long layoff, and honestly, I wasn't all that high on him in the first place. We are going to close out our parlay with Deiveson Figueiredo. That's right. So we got to go back to that parlay where we pin marked Marvin Vettori, and we're going to throw Deiveson Figueiredo in on the side of that. So when I got this earlier in the week, when I tweeted it out, I got a parlay value of minus 101. It looks like the lines have moved a little bit since then, and you might actually get a slightly better line than me. It looks like a little bit more money has come in on Tim Elliott, so Deiveson is going to be just a little cheaper depending on your book, depending on where you get him. You might get a slightly better line than me. You might even get slightly plus money, but we're going to go ahead and risk 1 unit to win 1 unit. And, for me, obviously, I'm going to risk 1.01 units to win 1 unit. But you guys will probably risk 1 unit to win 1.02 units or something like that. That's our parlay. Let's get it. We are headed back up to welterweight where Max Payne Griffin is taking on Alex Morono. He is the great white, and it fits him. Dude's albino. You can see straight through him. I can't talk. I haven't been in the sun in 2 years. All right. So Alex Morono is 16-5. Max Payne Griffin is 15-6. And this one is interesting. So Max Payne Griffin has had a very, very rough road in the UFC. He starts off not so hot, gets TKO'd by Colby Covington, bounces back with a KO of himself, and then gets fed to Zaleski dos Santos. Survives that fight. Then he gets paired up with Mike Perry, wins that one, drops 2 in a row, and I got to tell you, we benefited massively on our Thiago Alves by decision at plus 300. He got robbed in that fight, but we cashed on it, so I'm all good with it. Anyway, he bounces back with a decision win over Zelim Imadaev. And looked improved, actually. I got to be honest here. He's really explosive and athletic. Dude's 33 years old, and he's a solid striker. He's a really, really good boxer, kickboxer, and it seems like his ground game is something that he's patched up recently, and he really used that heavily in his last fight just earlier in April of 2019. So I think that's a new wrinkle in his game that he's really trying to employ. The only thing that's really the issue with this kid is he slows down. He comes out like a bat out of hell in round 1 and does not know how to pace himself. If he doesn't get the round 1 finish, he has a hard time grinding out a win because he slows down in round 2 and then he has almost no output in round 3. On the flip side of this thing, Alex, the Great White Morono, I'm impressed with this dude. He's got excellent fight IQ. He really knows what he's doing in there. He throws heavy counter hooks and heavy overhands looking for that big, powerful shot. He is a black belt in Taekwondo. He's also a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He himself is also a pressure fighter, so this is going to be one where you got to be the first one to make your opponent take a step back. Both these guys are going to get in there and think that they are the alpha, and one of them is going to break and have to concede that. He's got excellent in and out movement, and honestly, he fights really well moving backwards. So he might also be able to play the counter striker here, but I think he's going to look to gain the respect of Max Griffin with those big shots. He scrambles really, really well. As I said, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, so he is not out of his comfort zone if this thing hits the ground. He has heavy top control once it gets there, and he has good, vicious ground and pound. He uses his elbows on the mat really, really well. He's been training out of Fortis MMA, which is a gym that I'm very high on, a gym that I love, and a gym that's also got a lot of people fighting on it in this particular card. You all know I like that as well. Max Griffin averages 4.08 significant strikes per minute, and he absorbs 3.89, so he is just ever so barely outstriking his opponent. Alex Morono, on the other hand, is 4.26 significant strikes per minute and averages 2.69. So he is far outpacing his opponents. Now, Alex has a much lower level of competition so far in the UFC than Max Payne Griffin. So I have to give you that first and foremost. But I still feel like those numbers work because he's been in the UFC since 2016. He has been in the UFC long enough. He's fought guys like Kenan Song, Zach Otto, Keita Nakamura, and Niko Price. So, I mean, not bad names. Not great names, but not bad names. And Max Griffin fighting close with a guy like Thiago Alves in 2019, that raises a serious red flag for me. Given that Alex Morono is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and he's always gotten that in his back pocket, Max Griffin is looking to utilize the wrestling more and more, it looks like, in his game. If this thing hits the mat, I have no problem with that. I'm actually kind of happy about that because why wouldn't you want a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on the mat against a guy who's just kind of picking up wrestling later in his career, but he's actually a striker? I'm okay with that matchup. And then on the feet, I actually feel like it's relatively even. I will give the nod to Max Griffin here. I think he's going to have the slight edge in the striking, but Alex Morono's Taekwondo black belt does him some good. He's got some good spinning kicks that he puts in there. And like I said, he's got those good, strong hooks and overhands. I think he can counter very well as well. So this is going to be a relatively close, even fight. And honestly, I think it should be about a pick'em. And skill for skill, I think Alex Morono may be the better fighter, which means we found ourselves a bet, folks, because my boy Alex the Great White opened up as a slight dog, and everybody felt like putting money on Max Griffin, apparently. 68% of the money has come in on Max Griffin, driving him from minus 125 up to about minus 150. That gives us plus 131, the best line we can find on Alex Morono, and I'm going to take it. I think this kid looks good. I think Max Griffin is on my fade side of things. I don't know that he's going to be able to get this thing done because Alex can win rounds 2 and 3. As long as Alex doesn't get knocked out in round 1, which he's only been knocked out one time in his entire career, that was all the way back in 2014, I think he will be able to be the fresher fighter. He's going to have more gas in the tank, and when Max slows down, wouldn't be shocked if Alex is able to transition to the back and snatch his neck. And even if he doesn't get that finish, if they stay on the feet, like I said, Max Griffin's output just dips so far off the edge in rounds 2 and 3. I think that Alex Morono will be the busier fighter. He'll land the bigger shots, and those always score well with the judges. I'm going to go with Alex Morono for the upset here at plus 131. We're moving up one more time. We are headed to light heavyweight, where Ryan Superman Spann will take on Devin the Brown Bear Clark. Now, Ryan Spann is 16-5, and Devin Clark is 10-3-0, and I am on record how much I do not like Devin Clark. Y'all know, if you heard the last couple breakdowns, I have not been impressed with Devin Clark. I feel like he's a 185er who's fighting up at 205, and he pisses me off because he just keeps on proving me wrong. So Ryan Spann, he's another one who's training out with Fortis MMA. Love that gym. He's got a real good get-up game. He's got a good tight guillotine, but honestly, he's got really, really sloppy grappling. He gives up takedowns really easily, and he's huge. He's really long, really tall, and he gasses out later in fights. He's going to have a 5-inch height advantage and a 4-inch reach advantage. Now, he does average 3.6 significant strikes per minute, and he only absorbs 2.58 significant strikes per minute. So he does outland and outstrike his opponents. He's got 4 KOs of his 16 wins, and he's actually got 10 submissions. So, prior to his UFC run, he was actually submitting people left and right. Now, he has a submission loss. He's been knocked out twice. He's got kind of an even across the board here on his losses. But he's got a 66% takedown defense, which I think it seems better than it actually is. Devin Clark, on the flip side of this, is training out of Jackson Wink MMA. He's training with John Jones. He's on his Instagram. You can see all over it. He's with John Jones. Really seems like John Jones has kind of taken this kid under his wing. He is athletic, and he's got tree trunks for legs. The dude is huge. His upper body is a middleweight and his lower body is a heavyweight. Holy shit, he's got gigantic legs. He's really physically strong. He's excessively explosive, and he's got a good heavy grappling game. He does have some serious pop on his punches because of the speed that those giant thighs give him in that badonkadonk, but he doesn't seem to have KO power. So he's got crisp shots, and he can get to people's chins before they see him coming, but he's not really knocking anybody out. You know what I mean? He does average 3.28 significant strikes per minute, and he only absorbs 2.85 significant strikes per minute. So he also is outlanding his opponents, although not as impressively as Ryan Superman Spann is. Now, he averages 2.92 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he himself has a 77% takedown defense rate. Now, Ryan Spann, he's always looking for that damn guillotine. He goes for it over and over and over, and because of that, he gives up the takedowns. And I don't know if Fortis MMA has been able to fix that. I'm not sure if Fortis has seen that fault in his game and patched it up, or if that's still something that's out there. If he is willing to look for that guillotine on Devin Clark, Devin Clark's going to have an easy time getting this to the mat, and I honestly don't think he's going to be in any kind of trouble. He also, one thing here, very important, Devin Clark has the perfect training partner for this fight. Training with Jon Jones, who is the prototype for a guy like Ryan Spann. Tall, lanky, strong, good submission attack, good wrestler. I mean, Jon Jones, obviously, is like Ryan Spann 5.0. I mean, Ryan Spann is nowhere near the level of Jon Jones, but you couldn't find a better person to emulate the dude that you're gonna fight. I actually think that I'm going to have to bet Devin Clark here. I think the wrestling gets it done. I mean, he showed some serious improvement in his fight against Darko Stosic. Now, Darko made a bunch of really stupid errors in that fight, but Devin Clark showed some serious improvement. Now, he did get KO'd by Alexander Rakic, but Alexander Rakic is crazy explosive and athletic, more so even than Devin Clark is. And then Ryan Spann is just not on that level, in my opinion. I think Devin Clark's going to be able to get this thing clinched. I think he's going to be able to get the takedown, and I think he's going to grind out a guy like Ryan Spann. Now, here is something that I want to have a little bit of fun with. Devin Clark is only a plus 120 underdog right now. Most of the money has come in on Devin Clark. I'm not the only person who is analyzing the fact that he's going to be the better fighter here, or at least be able to wrestle Ryan Spann, but how do we really see this fight going? Is Devin Clark going to knock out Ryan Spann? He's got a reach disadvantage. He's not really much of a power puncher. No, I don't think so. I don't think he's going to knock out Ryan Spann. Is he going to submit Ryan Spann? Ryan Spann's only been submitted one time. Devin Clark's only submitted one guy. Is he really training his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Is he a black belt? I don't think so. Well, what does that leave? That leaves Devin Brown Bear Clark winning this thing by a 3-round decision. And right now, we can get plus 220 on that line. They've got the props listed with Ryan Spann winning this thing inside the distance at minus 110. They're saying that's the most likely outcome. So what we are getting is a nice juicy line on Devin Brown Bear Clark to win this thing by 3-round decision at plus 220. And that's where my money is going to go. Devin Clark doesn't beat anybody by anything but decision since he's stepped up to the UFC level. His last win by KO was a hand injury back in 2016. His opponent got one. So I don't know that we can actually count that as a KO TKO. I'd need to go back and actually watch that fight. It's so old it feels like it's irrelevant in this spot. And then he won by submission back in 2015. He has a majority. He's 60% to go to decision in his entire career. And all of his UFC fights have gone to decision as well. Whenever it finishes, it's his opponent doing the finishing. So if this thing wins inside the distance, it's not going to be Devin Clark. I feel like we're stacking an extra unit on top of this bet because even with him being improved, there's no way he's knocking out Ryan Spann unless he gets some kind of ground and pound type of spot that he gets in that we just don't see coming. And that's not something I see Ryan Spann being susceptible to. He's scrambly too much. I think Devin Clark is going to wear on him, pin him up against the cage, use his height to his advantage here because he's going to be a lot lower down to the ground. He'll be able to get to Spann's legs. And if Spann does stuff like look for that guillotine choke, Devin Clark will be able to put him on the mat and then hold him down for periods of time. I just think the wrestling is going to make the difference here. And I like Devin Brown Bear Clark by decision. decision at plus 220. The next fight is the preliminary main event, and maybe the fight that I am most excited about on the entire card. James the Texecutioner Vick is fighting Niko the Hybrid Price. Oh, be still my beating heart. Oh, that is such a good fight. Oh, man. We all know about James Vick and Niko Price. They've both been very active lately, and I've talked about them both a lot. James Vick is moving up to 170 pounds. He got his glass chin busted one too many times at 155. He got knocked out cold and hard by Justin Gaethje and Dan Hooker in round 1. He got roughed up by Paul Felder and lost a 3-round decision to him as well. His back is against the wall. You don't want to be 0-3 in the UFC. Generally, when that happens, you get cut. And he is getting an opportunity here, probably because he's changing weight classes. He's got a big fan base, which I've never honestly understood. And he's moving up to 170. And the man at 170 who's welcoming him to the dance is maybe one of the worst fighters that he could possibly face when he got up there. Niko the Hybrid Price. Y'all know how much I love Niko. Dude's got a 92% finish rate. He has 1 decision out of his 13 wins. His only 3 losses have come by finish. This kid either finishes his opponent or he goes out on his shield. Now, he was in a beautiful spot for us as a massive underdog against Jeff Neal in his last fight and did not get it done. Unfortunately, we had the right price for it, and he damn near did it for us. But this is not the kind of spot that I want to bet on Niko Price. It's exactly like what I was talking about earlier in the night with JJ Aldrich. You want this guy as a dog. You want him as an even money favorite. You want him where you can get the prop bet for him to win by inside the distance at plus 170 or something like that. The cat's out of the bag. Everyone knows what's going on with Niko Price at this point. He opened up at minus 175. Most of the money, actually, surprisingly, has come in on James Vick. He's been bet down to about minus 141, minus 150, and even that is too much. This is another one of those coin flippy fights. Both of these dudes are excellent strikers. Both of these dudes have nonstop forward pressure, and both of these dudes have been knocked out in the last 3 months. Neither of these guys should be fighting right now. You need more time to come back from a knockout than 3 months. Now, I think that Dan Hooker's knockout over James Vick was worse than the knockout over from Geoff Neal for Niko Price. I feel like Price was still kind of there. He was really hurt. He was really rattled, but he was still there. I think James Vick was gone. And especially after the Gaethje knockout, just a year before that, James Vick's chin is completely busted. My pick here is Niko Price. I think Price is going to win this thing simply by being the natural 170-pounder. I mean, maybe James Vick sees new life in this division. He shouldn't have been cutting all the way down to 155 to begin with, and that probably sucked all the oxygen and water out of his head. But I think we've got a Luke Rockhold situation here. I don't think switching divisions is going to be enough to completely revitalize his career. I don't think it's going to make a big enough difference that he'll be able to suddenly fly up to the top of the division. And Niko Price, in my opinion, he's more than a gatekeeper, especially with the kind of finishing power that this kid's got and the chin that James Vick has. I mean, really, I'm talking like Niko's a lock here. Whoever lands first is going to win this thing. Whoever lands first is going to win this. If you want a lock on this fight card, minus 400, this fight does not go to decision. That's the lockiest lock that there has ever locked. There is no way in hell that this fight goes to decision. James Vick may try to get it there, but Niko will not let it go there. He's going to go for it with everything that he's got, and he will either leave himself open for a knockout by James Vick, or he will get James Vick's chin. And I was looking at the props, and with Niko Price being a favorite, you can't even get dog money on him winning inside the distance. It's really ridiculous in this fight, in my opinion. I cannot bet it at any angle. Price inside the distance is minus 130. They know what's up. Now, Vick inside the distance is plus 225. If y'all are fans of James Vick and you think James Vick is going to be the one winning this, there's your bet right there. I'm not touching it. There is value on Vick wins inside the distance at plus 255 because, like I said, this fight will not go the distance. So you're getting an extra dollar on your bet, basically. $1.15. 25 cents. You're getting an extra $1.25. If you want to take James Vick as a dog, Just take him inside the distance. Thank me later, because you're either winning and cashing bigger or you're not winning at all in this fight. There's no way this thing is going to decision. I will say that again, and I'm going to look real stupid if this thing goes to decision. One last comment on that last fight. I'm also very biased. I'm a huge fan of Niko Price. Follow the dude on Twitter. He's just an awesome, awesome dude, so I'm pulling for him. That's one more reason I can't pull the trigger and make a bet, because like I said, the value is not with Niko in that fight. Can't do it. So on to the next fight. We are hanging out once again at middleweight, where Eryk, yo boy, Anders is making his return. Dude is 12-4 against Gerald GM3 Meerschaert, 29-11. And I hate Gerald Meerschaert. He's one of those guys that just seems to ruin me. I don't have a high opinion of him as far as him being a fighter, and he bones me. Every time I go against him, it looks like he just shows up when I decide to bet against him. So we lost that fight with Trevin Giles against him, and I'm still a little bitter about that. Granted, it wasn't really GM3's fault. Trevin Giles handed that fight to him on a platter. Okay, I'll move on. So Eryk Anders is another Fortis boy. He's training out of Fortis MMA. He's got good, solid technical striking. He was a college football standout, so very, very exceedingly athletic, very physically strong, and that's basically his go-to move. GM3 is a grappling-heavy fighter. He scrambles really, really well. He wants his fight on the mat. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Of his 29 wins, 21 of them has come by submission. He came off of back-to-back losses to Jack Hermanson, Kevin Holland, both grappling matches, and then Trevin Giles decided to grapple with him as well against everybody's better decision-making. I mean, realistically, he's fought mostly grapplers. They know he's mostly a grappler. He's been paired up with mostly grapplers. Now, he's being handed this fight here, in my opinion, to make Eryk Anders look good. So your boy is a draw. They paired him up against Thiago Santos, and he got knocked the hell out. And then he fought against Elias Theodorou and got awkwardly outpointed in a 3-round split decision loss, which not everybody feel he lost. And then he got dominated by Khalil Roundtree and damn near got finished by Khalil Roundtree. So the UFC softballed him Vinicius Moreira Castro, who we all know is one of the worst UFC fighters on the roster, probably doesn't belong there except to make other fighters look good. So Moreira is the guy who is a grappler only, and if he can't get the thing to the mat, he's literally dead, and he's only got about 1 round of gas. So Eryk handled him in about 1 minute and 18 seconds. The way I think of Eryk Anders is he's kind of a bully. Now, I don't mean that detrimentally. He's actually a really nice guy. I like him as a personality and things like that, but he fights like a bully. If he can out-athletic you, if he can out-physical you, you are in trouble. But then in the fight against Khalil Roundtree, perfect example of when he was not the bigger, stronger man that night. The technique and the ability of Khalil Roundtree was too much for him to handle. And then Khalil's also a phenomenal athlete. Eryk just kind of felt like a fish out of water. He was flopping around. He was getting rocked, getting hurt. It was something he just couldn't handle. Now, in this spot, I think he's very easily going to be the more talented athlete. I think the move to Fortis is a good one. We can't expect too much more out of Eryk Anders besides what we have already seen. But what we have seen is a good, solid ability to defend the takedown, keep this thing on the feet where he likes it, and then bop his opponents in the face. And if Gerald Meerschaert can't get this thing to the ground, he will be a fish out of water. He's going to also run out of gas. He does have a gas tank problem, in my opinion. And if he's forced to stand rather than grappling, that's where his gas tank is even worse. At least he's accustomed to grappling. He can kind of bear through that kind of, he can bear a little bit through that to get there. Now, Eryk Anders opened up as a minus 195 favorite, and I feel like the line probably should be about that ballpark. However, most of the money's coming in on Gerald Meerschaert, and I think that's because of the last couple performances of Eryk Anders, so that line is closing. You can get Eryk Anders at about minus 150 right now, minus 160, something like that, and I think it's about time for us to back this kid. I'm going to go ahead and snatch up that minus 150 on Eryk Anders over at 5 dimes. I think Now, if this line closes more and we could get Eryk Anders cheaper, I do apologize, but I also don't want to run the risk of people kind of opening their eyes here. I don't think Eryk Anders is going to be able to... I don't think Eryk Anders is going to give up the takedown. I don't think Gerald will be able to get this thing to the mat. And even if he does, I think Eryk Anders will be able to just kind of power muscle himself back up to the feet. And if Gerald Meerschaert cannot keep Eryk Anders on the mat, he doesn't have the savvy, sophisticated striking that you need to handle a guy like Eryk Anders. He doesn't. Now let's look at this for a second, okay? Eryk Anders, 4 losses in the UFC. Lyoto Machida, that was a split decision loss, which I actually think that he won. Tim Williams, who he beat up over the course of 3 rounds and then soccer kicked the hell out of him at the end of it. Thiago Santos, who did KO him in round 3, he got roughed up in that one, but Thiago Santos is a monster, and we know all about him. Elias Theodorou, who's got a very, very awkward striking-based style, had no intention of going to the ground, really difficult movement, difficult to pinpoint. Khalil Roundtree, who has a problem with the mat as well, but if you stand with him, he's a sick, legit Muay Thai fighter, and that was really his coming out party as a Muay Thai fighter as well. So those are the only guys that are beating Eryk Anders is good, solid strikers. Gerald Meerschaert is the exact opposite of that. And if you think you're going to out-physical Eryk Anders, a guy who is a college football playing standout, who is probably on every supplement imaginable and is physically insanely powerful and explosive, you got another thing coming. I'm not high on Gerald Meerschaert to begin with. I will look for any opportunity to fade the guy. And especially in a spot like this where you've got a guy like Eryk Anders, who's basically the rock to Gerald Meerschaert's scissors. I think he's a bad matchup for him. I will happily lay the 150 because I do think the minus 200 was about a more accurate line, and I would not be shocked if Eryk Anders gets himself another knockout win, especially if this thing gets into the 2nd or the 3rd round and Gerald slows down the way he does. I could see your boy getting a finish. Our next fight is at lightweight where Matt, the steamroller Frevola, 7-1-1, takes on Luis Peña, who is also 7-1. This is almost like an undefeated fight where somebody's L has got to go, but not quite because they both lost. So Matt Frevola is fighting out of the Serra Longo Fight Academy, which is a really good school. You know, he's got training partners like Al Quinta, Matt Wyman, guys like that, which solid, real good ground game school, good solid striking. He's basically little Al. I mean, he's even in the same weight class. He reminds me a lot of Al Quinta. He's got great cardio, good forward pressure, good strong wrestling, good submission defense. He's got intelligent grappling, and he fights aggressively for submissions. He averages 3.04 takedowns per 15 minutes with a 34% accuracy, which means he goes for a whole lot of takedowns. He doesn't happen to get them all, but he goes for a lot of takedowns. Now, he's going to be the shorter guy here. He's only 5'9". Luis Peña, on the flip side of this thing, trains out of AKA. He's got good use of clinches. He uses his knees really well. He doesn't check kicks a whole lot. That's something I noticed and I think could be a bit of a problem for him. He does give up the takedown, but he looks for scrambles and reversals. Training out of a place like AKA, they've got a pretty good wrestling program themselves there, so he's not like a fish out of water or anything like that. He is massive for the division at 6'3". He's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage here, but because of how big he is for the weight class, he seems to slow down a lot later on in the fight. He does tend to gas out. Now, he's got a 50% takedown defense, which means he does give up the takedowns pretty well, and I have never been all that impressed with Luis Peña. I was impressed with him on the Ultimate Fighter house, but as soon as he got into the actual UFC, it became apparent that he's not the stud that everyone thought that he was. Now, Matt Frevola is currently sitting around plus 145, and money is coming in on Luis Peña. This is another reverse line movement spot where 55% of the money has come in on Matt Frevola, but 45% of the money has pushed Luis Peña from minus 160 to minus 170. I want to bet Matt Frevola. I'll be completely frank, blunt, and honest with you all. I want to bet Matt Frevola, but I think this is a really close fight. He's going to have a difficult time getting Luis Peña to the mat. Luis he does a good job. He's very smart on the mat, okay? So I know he gives up the takedown, but it's not like he flops to his back and he's helpless when he gets there. He looks for reversals. He looks for submissions himself. He tries to take his opponents back. I mean, he doesn't make an easy time of it. Both of these guys are coming up, and I am more impressed with Frevola than I am with Peña, but Frevola did get knocked out by Marco Polo Reyes, who we've established is a bum. And because we've established that he's a bum, and he got knocked out by said bum, somebody like Luis Peña, who's got the giant volatile knees that he does, is going to cause him problems. So I'm going to keep an eye on this one. If that line gets wider, if it gets out of hand, if so much money comes in on Peña, or if I see him at the weigh-ins and he just looks like absolute crap, we might think about taking a shot on the steamroller a little bit later, but not right now. For now, it's a pass. For now, we'll call it a pass and just look for a nice, interesting fight. We have got another really fun women's fight. This is a good card for women's fight, in my opinion. Women's strawweight, Mackenzie Dern, who is 7-0 undefeated, comes in taking on Amanda Ribas, who is 7-1-0. Both of these women are 26 years old, and this fight may kind of just be a bit of a dumpster fire. So let's start off with Amanda Ribas. Okay, so she is 7-1-0. She got knocked out one time back in 2015, but she looks like a finisher more often than not herself, which is rare in the women's division, as we all know. One of her wins has come by decision. The other three have been KOs and submissions. The lady is legit. So she's a judo black belt. She's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, but she does tend to lack power. Now, I know she got the knockouts, but those were, against questionable competition. So she's kind of flat-footed. She lacks power. She does try to train out of ATT, which is a fantastic gym. You all know I'm a fan of ATT. And she is coming off of a USADA suspension from 2016 to 2019. She had that suspension reduced because USADA determined that it was a contaminated supplement and not an actual, bust for performance-enhancing drugs. So that's an interesting thing to note here, considering she comes from Brazil. A lot of Brazilian fighters are on the juice, and she may or may not have gotten popped appropriately. At any rate, she's training at a good gym. She's got a good skill set. The girl's solid. I like Amanda Ribas, and her opponent, Mackenzie Dern, who is 7-0, trains out of the Black House. Now, she has been out for about a year and a half because she had a baby. Now, she had that baby 4 months ago. Holy crap, 4 months ago she had a baby, and she's already back fighting. And according to Kenny Florian, shout out to the Anik and Florian podcast, he said that he has never seen her in that kind of shape. Now, this can go one of two ways. You might say that because she's now a mom, maybe she took her health seriously during the pregnancy. Maybe she was just dying to get back in the cage, so she did everything she could to make sure she was in, half-decent shape, even though something like having a baby is massively traumatic on your body and puts it through a lot of changes. But the fact that she's not struggling with the weight class is something new. She's always had a problem getting down to the weight class, and she's never really... She should probably fight at 125, but she's trying to make 115, and she's had documented struggles getting there. It looks like that may be behind her, but we're not exactly sure why. Something I've made comment on in the past is that I do not bet on women who are coming off maternity leave. It's just not a good idea. Now, before anyone who's new to the podcast attacks me for that, don't get me wrong, I absolutely respect and value what women go through when it comes to childbirth and pregnancy. I've got a 4-year-old daughter of my own, and I respect and love my wife for everything that she has done with that. But when it comes to fighting, your body goes through some crazy changes during the pregnancy, and when you get done with all of that, there's no guarantee you're going to be the same person coming on the other side of it. So one of the big things is the motherly instinct. They kind of change. Mentally speaking, you start looking to take care of your offspring. You start wanting to, be nesting, that kind of thing. You're not viciously going out to hunt and kill somebody anymore like you did before you had the baby. And that makes a huge, huge difference on your mental aspect when you get in the fight. When you get in there for the first time after having the baby and after taking care of this little thing that depends on you just to get through the day, you have a hard time pulling the trigger, cracking somebody's face after that. I've seen it, and it's a tough thing. I wouldn't advise anybody bet on a woman coming off of maternity leave for that reason. That's not to say that they won't get it back after a fight or two. Generally, the good ones especially, like we'll see in the main event with the Karate Hottie, they can get it back, they do, and it comes with time. It just takes a little bit. I don't know that Mackenzie Dern coming off of just 4 months after having her baby, I think she's going to be compromised. I legitimately believe that not only will she have trouble, she'll be a different fighter, she's going to be straight up compromised. So she's putting her 7-0 record on the line here, and I think this is probably too early for her to come back. I'm not touching this fight. So somehow Amanda Ribas opened up at plus 175, and I wish I had been quicker on the trigger. I wish I was looking at the odds when the lines dropped, because I would have been all over that. I would have taken her at plus 160. I would have taken her at plus 150. I would love that kind of a dog price on Amanda Ribas. She is a killer, and she's going to be coming in here looking for blood, whereas Mackenzie Dern may be coming in here physically impaired and may also be coming in here mentally impaired. Now, they're both Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts, so if this thing hits the mat, it could get scrambly, and Mackenzie Dern might not get caught with something because she's just so comfortable on the mat. She has tons and tons of experience grappling. So if it lands on the ground, maybe we see the same old Mackenzie Dern, but on the feet, I think Amanda Ribas has the advantage. And if it stays on the feet, yeah, I mean, you got to wonder about like body kicks and stuff like that. Again, not trying to be insensitive, but you just had a baby in there. Like, it takes longer than that to heal up unless you're just a freak of nature. And I'm not going to roll the dice gambling that Mackenzie Dern is a freak of nature. I wish that dog money was still around for Amanda Ribas, because I would totally hit that line, but I don't think plus 110 is enough for me to warrant it, because Mackenzie Dern is still very dangerous. Unfortunately, as much as I'd like to bet this fight, because of the circumstances, we got to pass. Now, I'm going to glaze over this one real quick, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't really look into it. Thomas Gifford, who is 14-8, is facing Mike Davis, who is 6-2. He was supposed to fight Brock Weaver, and I did my research on Brock Weaver and then saw that he was out of the fight. So I didn't get to Thomas Gifford. Mike Davis is a last-minute, short-notice replacement, and both of these guys are coming off of losses. Both of those losses were in their UFC debuts. I am looking for opportunities to pass on this particular card. Like I said, I'm trying to make smart, tight choices here, and this is not one that I feel like rolling the dice on. I feel like this will be an information gathering fight. Let's watch this one very closely. Two dudes coming off of a loss, looking to make their statements and really, show themselves as to why they belong in the UFC. Should be fun, but I don't know what kind of shape Mike Davis is going to come in looking like, on 4 days notice. So yeah, let's go ahead and pass on this one. That takes us to the co-main event of the evening, where Cub Swanson takes on Kron Gracie at featherweight. Cub Swanson, legend of the sport and the division, 25-11, taking on the undefeated Kron Gracie, who is, yes, of the Gracie lineage, who is currently 5-0 in professional mixed martial arts. This is a great fight, and I'm looking forward to learning more about Kron Gracie. So basically, we all know Cub Swanson. He's been around literally forever, but the poor dude has been on the BJ Penn retirement tour. The UFC has been abusing him later on in his career here. He's 35 years old, and he's riding a 4-fight losing streak. He lost by submission to Brian Ortega. He lost a decision to Frankie Edgar, got choked out by Renato Cornero, Moicano, and then he dropped a split to Shane Burgos. Now, he has been holding his own in these fights, but this is where you get that dip off the cliff. They hold their own, they look good in fights, but they can't quite string the wins together. Maybe he'll get 1 or 2 more, but then that's it. Then he's going to dump off the cliff at the end of his career here. That's just kind of how these things go. Dude's been around forever. I don't want to speak ill of him, but he's been fighting since 2004. So even though he's only 35, some people might have 3 more years of fighting. That age wear and tear might just be catching up to the guy. On top of that, he's not necessarily evolving as a fighter, so people know exactly what they're going to get. He's easy to plan for. The UFC is looking to use his name to springboard Kron Gracie. That's blatantly obvious here. So even looking back at his wins. He wasn't really beating anybody super fantastic either. In 2016, he fought Hakran Diaz. Yes, he beat Doo Ho Choi, who everybody was high on, but that was Choi's first step up against legitimate competition. And then he won a decision over Artem Lobov, who we all know is a 500 fighter and doesn't belong in the UFC either. So he doesn't have any notable wins for the last 5 years. I mean, yikes. I don't think Cub is long for the UFC. He might get a couple more fights, but again, the UFC is just going to use him as a stepping stool. Kron Gracie is 5-0 with 5 submissions. He is a sick and twisted, phenomenal Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. The dude, if he gets your back, you're dead. His last 3 fights have all come by rear naked choke victory, and I think that's exactly what he's going to do here. Cub Swanson has showed to be a little bit chinny in his last couple of fights. Although he's gutted through it, he has been rocked several times. He gives up ground transitions and scrambles. He's going to be the smaller guy here, and the biggest thing is when he scrambles in these spots, he gives up his back. I mean, most notably, in 2018, his fight against Renato Moicano, he lost by first round rear naked choke in that fight as well. Now, Renato got the fight to the mat by punching him in the face and rocking him, not by taking him down. So this is a spot that I'm also a little bit tentative on. I do think Kron Gracie wins this thing by first round submission. Let me just get out on the table right now and tell you that. I think Kron wins by submission. Now, he opened up at minus 265. It's been a landslide of money coming in on Cub Swanson, driving him to a minus 169. So I am not ready to bet Kron Gracie yet, because everyone and their mom is looking at this and going, Cub Swanson is so good on the feet. He's got so much experience. He's going to be great. He's going to turn, like he just, all the reasons. And I agree with them to an extent. This is a huge step up for Kron Gracie. It's only his second fight in the UFC. His first fight was against Alex Caceres, who we know is kind of a bum. I like Alex Caceres, but that's a great stylistic matchup for a guy like Kron Gracie. He doesn't defend the takedown well. He's super long and skinny, and Kron was able to get the takedown and get the back with relative ease. This is another spot, though, that, I mean, under the bright lights, you never know. Now, Kron Gracie trains with the Diaz brothers, so his striking is very rapidly improving, more than likely, I would be willing to bet, but he sells out for that takedown. He knows what his bread and butter is. So I think he's going to get the submission, but I'm going to wait, because I don't want to pay minus 170 for a guy who's fighting the best fighter he's ever fought. He's fighting a legend of the sport, and he is going to be outclassed on the feet as far as we can tell. Now, he's got underrated striking, I feel like, and that's just because we haven't been able to see it inside the octagon yet. But I don't know if he can hang with a guy like Cub Swanson, because that is Cub's forte. If there's one thing Cub can still do great, it's his striking. So I'm going to pass. I'm going to watch this one closely, because if we can get, I mean, I doubt the money's going to get that far, but if we can get down to like minus 140, minus 135, kind of like we did last week, if we can get a nice sweet price on Kron Gracie, I will take that shot. But I don't want to lay this much juice on a guy who's still relatively untested and, like I said, fighting an absolute legend of the sport. We have got there. We have reached the main event of the evening, which is a women's headliner strawweight fight between Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Joanna champion, who is 15-3, taking on Michelle the Karate Hate Waterson. This is a fun fight. This is a really, really good fight, and it's also kind of deeper than I expected it to be. So let's dive right on into this thing. The Karate Hottie has been around basically forever. She's 17-6, and Joanna is 15-3. Joanna is the greatest 115-pound champion that we have ever seen. She ruled that division with an iron fist before she got taken out by Rose Namajunas. And then she moved up and tried to challenge Valentina Shevchenko at 125, got soundly defeated, and is moving back down to 115. So something to note here is that 9 out of 10 of Joanna's last fights have been title 5-round fights. That is a ridiculous stat. The woman knows how to fight for 25 minutes, and this is going to be a title eliminator main event for Michelle Waterson, and unless I'm mistaken, it's the first time in her career she's ever gone for 5 rounds. Michelle Waterson's story actually reminds me a little bit of Dustin Poirier, kind of that, and Michael Bisping, that always the bridesmaid, never the bride kind of spot where she feels like she's a challenger and contender for the title, but she's never been given the opportunity. She's been around forever. She's got a good skill set, but she just couldn't quite get there. And even now, she's basically calling out for the title shot, and she's been denied that, and she has to fight a monster like Joanna before she gets that title shot. Michelle Waterson, obviously the karate hottie. She's got some sweet karate. The girl's got some thick legs on her, and I mean that in a good way. She's seriously built, and she's improving physically. She's taking this seriously. She's training like someone who wants to take the title. She is in the best shape of her career by far, and I've said that for her last 2 or 3 fights. If you're following her on Instagram, she is massively stepping up her game when it comes to weight training, and you can physically see it. She's super aggressive off of her back with submissions and strikes, so even if she does end up getting taken down, which I don't think she will in this fight, but that's something that she's got in her back pocket. She's got excellent footwork. She has really good kicks. She throws kicks to the legs, kick to the body, and because of those giant tree chunk legs, she hits hard, man. Those are some serious leg kicks that she bombs on girls with. She has really powerful judo throws, and realistically, that's how she gets the fight to the ground more often than not, is these head and arm judo throws. And I know I've beaten up on the concept of head and arm judo throws several times here on the podcast, but with Michelle Waterson, she does it so explosively, so powerfully, and she doesn't give up her back. That's always the concern with girls that kind of do it sloppily, is they expose themselves to getting their backs taken. Whereas Michelle Waterson lands in a very dominant and powerful side control every time she hits it, and she hits it almost every single fight. It's something she goes for very regularly and gets more often than not. Now, Joanna will be cutting back down to 115 for the first time in a while, and she's taken a decent bit of time off. So we haven't seen her since December of 2018 when she fought at 125, and she is also one who has struggled to make that 115-pound limit. She's really tall for the division. I mean, I know she's short at 5'6", but she's going to have a 3-inch height advantage on Michelle Waterson. She's also going to enjoy a reach advantage. She's got a phenomenal output. Both of these women outland their opponents. Let's see. Michelle Waterson lands 3.61 significant strikes per minute, absorbing 3.07, so not nearly as high of a clip. Joanna 6.07, a massive significant strike output, absorbing only 2.77. So Michelle Waterson does tend to fight closer to her opponents and doesn't output as much. She averages 2.19 takedowns per fight at a 65% takedown accuracy over 15 minutes. And then the takedown defense really is the story for Joanna at 80%. I don't know that this fight is going to hit the mat. If Joanna is Joanna, she doesn't get taken down a whole lot. You can't. She is too dang good, and she's got incredible balance. I don't know that she's going to get in deep enough for Michelle Waterson to use that head and arm throw. And if it's going to be a straight up striking game, Joanna should piece up Michelle Waterson. And I hate to say that. I want to believe in Michelle Waterson. I want to believe that she can win this fight, finally get her crack at the title, a la Michael Bisping, and ride off into the sunset after she proves that moms are UFC champions and she gets that opportunity. You can get her over at Bookmaker right now at plus 343, and I am so tempted to take that shot because the real big question for me is, where is Joanna at mentally? That's the biggest question, because Joanna was the champion. She ruled with an iron fist for a long time, and she dominated everybody. But now that she has lost her championship, she moved up a weight class, and she got a couple of wins in, but she learned she's not going to be the champion there either. And you look at, what happens in these kinds of spots, kind of guys like Anderson Silva, things like that. Do they ever get their title back? Generally speaking, no. They don't ever get the title back. Even a guy like George St. Pierre, I know he retired, he didn't get beat, but he had to get a hand-picked opponent in Michael Bisping that was a perfect matchup for him in a different weight class to come back and get the title. He didn't challenge a guy like Usman or Woodley for the belt in his weight class. You just don't see it happen. I don't know if Joanna is going to be the same Joanna. I want to watch the weigh-ins. I want to watch the pre-fight interviews. Joanna got implants. Joanna has been doing modeling. I mean, look at her Instagram. Go find Joanna's Instagram and just take a look, because she is living her best life right now. She is modeling left and right. She's got photo shoots all the damn time, and is constantly posting pictures of her doing stuff like that. I don't know how invested she is in fighting right now. And honestly, I want to see how happy and perky she is leading up to the fight, because if she doesn't have that fire, that intensity, we're also used to Joanna, mean mugging, intimidating girls, going for it, that kind of thing, making them feel uncomfortable. If she is not doing that, then I will bet Michelle Waterson, because at 3-1 and 3.5-1, if money keeps pouring in on Joanna, it'll be 4-1. I feel like that line is too wide. I feel like it'll be too wide, and there will be value on Michelle Waterson because she does have an adequate skill set, and she is that journeyman fighter who still wants her crack at the title. She is hungry, she is ready to go, and she's put the moms of the world on her back. I am rooting for her. I am cheering for her. I really hope she wins this fight, and if I can find any excuse to, I will bet on her, because like I said, I feel like that fight is I feel like the line is way too wide here. If Joanna is mentally cracked whatsoever, we know what that can do to your skill set. Prime Joanna would piece up Michelle Waterson, but if this is slightly faded Joanna and we have peak Michelle Waterson, Michelle's got a shot. All right, we got there, boys and girls. Let's recap those picks. We have got a parlay. We've got Marvin, Vettori, and Deiveson Figueiredo for -101. You're probably going to get it a little bit better than that. We're going to roll with Marlon, Chito, Vera to finish inside the distance at +125. We're going to roll with the dog, Alex Morono at +131. We will take the brown bear, Devin Clark, by decision, using his grappling advantage to win this thing for us in cash. We're going to lay the wood with Eryk, yo boy, Anders, to just be the more physical fighter and the better athlete here. What the hell was that? My dog knocked crap over in the background. Sorry about that. Thank you for sticking with me. Like, share, and subscribe. Comment. Talk to me. What's your favorite bet on the weekend? What was your favorite bet last weekend? How much did you cash on that city kickboxing parlay? How about our boy Izzy taking the title? Love it. Thank you all. Thanks for the support. Love you all. Let's freaking roll.